The United Americas, otherwise simply known as the UA, was one of the few and powerful human federations within the alien universe. The United Americas saw the coming together of the entire North and South American continents under one centralized government known as a conglomerate nation. But when did this happen, and why? And how did it inevitably affect humanity's future as we spread out amongst the stars and begun to encounter the dangerous region of the galaxy that we inhabit in the alien universe? The United Americas has interesting origins. The formation of this world government was primarily due to the rising of two other major world powers. You had the Union of Progressive Peoples and the Three World Empire. The United Americas was formed in the year 2103, after the North, Central and South American countries all decided to merge into one socio-economic unit in order to match that of the rest of the world's powers, such as the UPP, or the Union of Progressive Peoples, which comprised of a number of communist countries like Russia and China, doing much the same thing, a perceived threat to the American continent, and its superiority as a world superpower. Beginning in 2103 and finalised in 2104, the UA became arguably the most powerful of the three existing world powers on Earth at the time, and wasted little time stretching their reach to the heavens, following the lead of the Three World Empire that had really been the forefront of off-world colonisation until this time. They colonised and took control of regions in the Middle Heavens such as a few core system worlds along what is known as the American Corridor, as well as a similar branch within the Outer Veil, and continued to set up colonies and control a large number of the Outer Rim territories and the Far Reach American arm. They operated several extraplanetary and solar colonies within the solar system itself, known as Sol. The UA also controlled the Olympia colony on Luna. The key capital worlds of sorts in the UA's territory included Bracken's World, Terraform 3, Morning Glory, the D-27 Prison, and the worlds in the Crestus Prime cluster garrison systems, whose locations are justly classified. The organisation of the UA military, security and policing force is rather basic, but don't get me wrong, it's pretty much as complicated as it needs to be. The UA governmental and military structure has largely been determined by the Washington Treaty. The USA stood at the forefront of the merger of its neighbours from the north and south and acted as a focusing rod for the resources, technology and military industrialism of the continent to be concentrated into a sole, premium and prestige peacekeeping/fighting force, come to be known as the Colonial Marine Corps. The UA followed the USA's government ruling and leadership system in many ways, with there being a president, vice president, and a congressional body. However, now instead of representing their member states, Congress would now represent all states and prior countries from North and South America. The United Americas Allied Command was quickly formed as the government's military joint command structure for all of the military groups and assets in the UA. These included the United States Colonial Marine Corps, the Canadian Colonial Armed Forces, the Latin American Colonial Navy, the United States Aerospace Force, and the United Americas Outer Rim Defense Fleet, all of which were divided between two main contingents, the Colonial Marines and the Colonial Navy of the UA. Headed by the Secretary of Defense, the UA Allied Command is a think tank of high-level admirals and generals who devise strategy for and coordinate all major combat operations, as stated in Alien the RPG. The Colonial Marines serve to maintain security and prosperity of all the member states in the UA, as well as their off-world colonies and stations, and any other interests, in addition to the allies of the UA where need be. There existed many classified, and likewise some officially known, garrisons of the Colonial Marines across the Middle Heavens region, strategically placed in order to respond to any potential threat in acceptable timeframes. While the Colonial Marines do possess their own line of frigate-class ships for transport and combat, they are largely backed by the Colonial Navy, The Colonial Navy consists largely of two dominant naval forces in the UA, the US Aerospace Force and the Outer Rim Defense Fleet, within which exists the War Class and Carrier spacecraft of the UA military. Not only are they equipped to deal with a sizable threat, but also provide regular humanitarian support during things such as natural disasters and to act to secure colonies from hostile life forms. Colonial administration supports and monitors all UA extrasolar colonies, stations and assets, making sure things such as supply lines and chains flow as intended. This unit is essentially the federal level officers and undertake more formal and high-risk investigation and operations. They act to maintain order in the colonies across the UA territory and actually have lobbied for better rights for colonists over the decades, like things such as a minimum wage establishment for colonists. However, their attempts have always been met with resistance from local and large corporate lobbyists. The Office of the Colonial Marshals are sort of the police officers of the UA across their off-world colonies. They maintain law offices throughout the colonies and work with the Interstellar Commerce Commission to prevent the import and exportation of dangerous or hazardous biological or chemical agents. All major marshal officers have an Interstellar Commerce Commission agent attached to them in order to maintain an unbiased balance of power in their colonial affairs. The marshals also often work in conjunction with the US federal agencies such as the Colonial Administration. As stated, the UA began in early 2100s and quickly took to securing a large amount of the Middle Heavens region of space in order to compete with their rival superpower governments. Things did not go entirely to plan though, as many of these off-world colonies eventually decided they wished to become independent worlds from the UA. The world of Tauran Prime is the greatest example of peoples of the UA colonies refusing the authority of the UA. A rebel cell known as the Jahar, present on Taurus Prime around the 2130s to 40s, acted to take control of the Tauran colony by murdering the UA planet-side officials. Anyone who dared oppose them would suffer the same fate, labelled as traitors to the new rebellion faction. Later, the Jahar rounded up even more of the planet's population and interned them into camps, compared to that of work or concentration camps. Faced with this massive dilemma, the UA had to make their move, before other rebellious worlds decided to take their stab at the same acts of terrorism. The UA Allied Command worked with counter-insurgents located planetside in order to bring about the retaking of the world and the disillusionment of the work camps. This fight was far from over though, as the Jahar forces mostly retreated and eventually took control of a small fleet of UA warships. These rebels were the test to see if the UA had what it took, not only to grow their colonies throughout the frontier, but to maintain order and security among them. In response to the Jahar's movements, the UAAC mobilised the Colonial Navy and their own sizable fleets of warships and frigates in order to protect their interests and fight these insurgents. This conflict eventually became a full-size civil war that lasted a whole 2 years. Luckily enough for the UA and a lot of the civilians, fighting was occurring in space and not much on planetside or in the colonies or stations. By the end of the conflict, the Jahar had been defeated, the UA triumphant. However, the government had learned a valuable lesson, but also cemented themselves as a daring, capable, and most importantly, powerful force to be reckoned with, boasting themselves as the most powerful interstellar peacekeeping force, with the Colonial Navy and Marine Corps at their command. Around this time, the Colonial Marines would maintain a sizable presence on Luna and Mars. Their lunar operation mostly related to airspace traffic control for Luna and Earth's collective security, and with the Martian presence being far more substantial and ongoing. This was due to an emergence of hostile and dangerous Martian bugs that were running rampant on the surface due to the heating of the planet by human colonization. With the most hazardous incident in the Sol region really being that of the rogue Zula Hendrix and rogue android unit Davis 1 in 2137. With this military might at their side, they doubled down on its ability to allow them to make their way through the shaky borders of the Middle Heavens regions, such as when in the 2150s they effectively took control of the Jahaji system, known for its rich mineral abundance, from their allies and neighbours, the Three World Empire. Later in the year 2157, in a co-funding attempt with Weyland-Yutani, the UA helped establish the colony of Hadley's Hope on the moon of LV-46. After such, and leading into the 2160s, two more coup-type rebellions would occur. The first was inspired by a rebel faction sympathetic to the government of the Union of Progressive Peoples on the Tyson colony in the year 2162. As the supporters there grew, it suggested that the Union of Progressive Peoples supported the rebels' movements to overthrow the current UA government on the world, setting up their own socialist government in place. The remaining UA loyalists, as well as the neighbouring colonies, were able to alert the UA, and so the UA acted accordingly. This time the battle was on the ground, and the Colonial Marines' time to prove their worth had arrived. This conflict became known as the Tyneston Campaign. The around 500,000 colonists were forced to take a side and join the fight against their rival, or possibly be caught in the crossfire of the battle and become civilian casualties. This campaign ended in failure and tragedy though, as neither side really won. A stalemate was drawn, and the remaining colonists, now fractured, broken, and now had made enemies of each other, essentially, reduced their own world to a nuclear wasteland, with a few hostile factions left to fight for whatever was left. To the current day, the planet remains in perpetual chaos, with the campaign never really ending for the inhabitants of the world. Since the campaign, the UA and the UPP have remained in a state of Cold War, only striking when little consequences will arise, each waiting for the moment to make the move on the other. Pushing towards the rim of the galaxy, the Orion Arm, the UA moved into the area of the Middle Heavens region known as the Solomons in the year 2163, which for the day was the furthest consecutive human colonization attempts ever made. Moving into the late 2160s and 2170s, Lena 349, a three-world empire colony, had begun to see similar cracks of rebellion previously experienced by the UA. Again, the UA stepped in, and this time to help their allies in the three-world empire. A revolt began on the world, with the rebels putting up a good fight. However, they were no match for the Colonial Marines, and the UA had learnt how to deal with insurgents by now, quickly and effectively. Insurgents such as themselves. However, to the Three World Empire's disdain, after the UA's success, they insisted on maintaining a military presence on the planet for future security and insurance. Had the UA begun to overstep their bounds? Until now, they had maintained many valuable contracts and treaties with the Three World Empire, and while obligated to help defend Three World Empire planets, an ongoing UA occupation of a Three World Empire planet was worrying to say the least for both of these two. From now on, both sides kept a very watchful eye on the movements and colonization attempts of the other. By the end of the 2170s, in the year 2179, tensions were high on the frontier of space. However, things seemed to be mostly quiet. In July of 2179, the colony of Hadley's Hope had stopped transmitting to Weyland-Yutani. The company requested that the UA send a Colonial Marines force to investigate, and so the UA sent a small group of Marines aboard the USS Sulaco, along with a civilian consult and a Weyland-Yutani representative to protect the company's interests on LV-46. The mission's goal was to find out what had happened and verify the stories of Ellen Ripley, of a potentially hostile alien organism found on the moon by her and her crew. However, instead of getting answers, the UA lost an entire squad of Marines. The colony of Hadley's Hope was nuked, and any information that they could retrieve from this mess travelled off with the USS Sulaco, which is still missing to this day. Suspicions were raised towards Weyland-Yutani, and the UA's distrust of their allies had begun. Whilst the two held many business dealings in high importance with each other, recent events, though, had seen the disappearance of numerous USCMCs, or United States Colonial Marines, aside from the Hadley's Hope incident. Recon battalions had begun to piece the puzzle together, and all evidence pointed towards Weyland-Yutani's involvement in shady operations that go against the UA and their jurisdiction. This even put further strain on the relationship between the UA and the Three World Empire, due to the Three World Empire's close connection with Weyland-Yutani. Full-scale war was looking like a possibility. Sadly, things have only gotten worse on the frontier of known space, as Anchor Point Station was destroyed in the same year, in 2179, in a reactor meltdown, by causes unknown. Little is known of the incident, however the UA's suspicions fall on the defaults, either the Union of Progressive Peoples or Weyland-Yutani. For the next 4 years, the UA continued to watch their backs against their allies, whilst guarding their chest from the UPP, who continue to generate more and more border conflicts over worlds that are locked in territory disputes. A second iteration of Anchor Point Station is manufactured, and the UA have ensured to place a Colonial Marshals Bureau in order to watch the situation and act in accordance to any hostile disturbances. For now, only time will tell how things will progress for the UA. However, as of 2183, it is a dangerous time to be alive in the Middle Heavens. The UA history has been a colourful one to say the least, however, what is to come next is currently unknown. However, with 2 follow-up expansions for Alien the RPG, which has already done such an amazing job of lore and world building for this story, he's hoping we get more on them as the time progresses. And if and when we do, I'll be here to cover all the lore for you loyal Alien fans. Before I go, I wanted to let you know about the Acheron Colonial Marketplace, the one-stop shop for all Project Acheron merch. Here you can pick up shirts, hoodies, mugs, phone cases and more. So if you want to support the channel and look good doing it, pick up some Acheron merch. But what other videos would you like to see? If you have any ideas or have any questions, please leave them in the comments or contact me through Twitter or on the Project Acheron Discord. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and share this video. And if you want to really help see this channel thrive and grow, as well as gain a bunch of awesome rewards for yourself, consider becoming a patron, such as Christopher Dasinger and Ambrosia, leaders of the Project Acheron Hive. I hope to see you all here again very soon, but until then, this is Project Acheron signing off.